Hello everyone, this is Daniel of Ocarinas, and today in this video I am going to be showing you how to make a double ocarina. Now I've already started a chamber here, same way you'd make a single chamber ocarina, but what I've done is, this cloth by the way is to keep where we are going to add the second chamber wet before we add it, while we let the rest of this dry. What I've done is I've actually made this chamber slightly curved around where we're going to actually add the second chamber. That might make it easier to make sure that the holes don't accidentally dig into one of the other chambers. Making a double ocarina, the two chambers must remain separate. You don't want to have air going between the two of them. Alright, now, I'm actually not going to show how to tune the first chamber in this video, because I've made videos on how to do that before. Basically, tune it the same way you would any other ocarina, any other single chamber, except do not add a thumb hole for your right hand. That is the only difference. The rest of it's tuned the exact same way, just do not add a thumb hole. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tune this, or actually I'm going to let it dry a little more and then tune it. And then we are going to talk about adding the second chamber. I'll show you how to do that and how to tune the second chamber, because tuning the second chamber is completely different from any other type of ocarina. Oh, and one last thing, you'll notice that the clay in this video is actually a bit brighter than usual. That's because this is actually porcelain right here, but it is made the way you make ocarinas out of porcelain is the exact same way you do out of clay. So even though I'm using a different material, just do what I'm doing for clay and it'll turn out the same way. Well, assuming you make it right. Now, if you haven't already had significant experience making ocarinas, do not even attempt to make a double ocarina. It'll just be hours of misery. The double ocarina is actually pretty difficult to make. What you're basically doing is you are taking a perfectly working single chamber ocarina, which in itself is pretty difficult to do, and then you are adding a second ocarina onto the side of that and making sure that it's in tune with the first chamber. It's got to be in a key that corresponds with this one. What is the first chamber of this ocarina? First chamber of this ocarina, if you can't see that, is A. So what I'm actually going to do, I want an ocarina in C, so I'm actually going to add a couple subholes. I hear my cat. I'm going to add a couple subholes, and I am going to make the main note of this C.
Jojo, do you want down here? Did someone lock you out?
Oh, come on in. Alright, so I finished tuning the first chamber of the double ocarina. I tuned it to C, lowest note being A with two subholes. Now the reason I added a second subhole to this ocarina is because with the lack of a thumb hole, it makes it much easier to add the second subhole, since a second thumb hole would give you two more notes. This second subhole gives you two more lower notes. So they both offer the same range, it's just one is significantly smaller than the other one. Alright, now the next step, we still have this part significantly wet. We are going to score the edges of this part. Right about here. Oh, another tip is also keep the area around the mouthpiece wet, because we're obviously going to add a mouthpiece to this later. So you can do the same thing with paper towels. Just make sure it's not drenched and covering it, or you might ruin the ocarina. I'm actually going to make the scores a little deeper in this one, just because I think I went a little thin when I first added these. Alright, now we're going to cover those in water, and this is going to be where the second chamber is going on. So we are going to take some new clay. Alright, now I'm just going to roll this into a ball, which I think I'll do on camera so you can have something to look at. Here we go. I'm going to make this more of an oval shape, and I am going to hit it against the table really hard. There. Now that it's flat, I am going to start molding it into a cup shape, like I normally would be doing if I was to make a small ocarina in this shape. Except I'm actually going to make it more thin than usual, but long still. There we go. And then this is going to go on right to the side here. I'm also going to pinch the edges a little bit, get a little piece of clay that I can just smooth out onto the chamber, as well as score this chamber. There we go. So now I'm going to score it. And this is going to be kind of like our second ocarina that we're adding on, except we don't need to put two halves together because, well, the wall of the other ocarina is the other half. I'm just going to make sure that there's plenty of room in here for air and for fingers to be. Alright. Now we are going to add the two together. Like so. Actually, I'm going to make sure that this is even more wet so it doesn't come off. Now, what's really important about keeping the first chamber wet where you're going to add the second one is if you don't do that while it dries, this is going to dry a lot faster than the second chamber, and they're going to dry unevenly, which means the second chamber is going to crack and fall off. So very important to keep where you're going to add the second chamber wet until you actually add it. Same thing goes for the mouthpiece. Keep that wet too, or the mouthpiece is going to pop off. And that wouldn't be good, especially on a double ocarina. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flatten the end right here just a little bit. Like that. And I'm actually going to take a bit of clay, and this is going to be where the mouthpiece is going to go on. Or the airway, I should say. Well, both. So I'm going to have this side be a little thicker, just so there's room for the airway to actually go through. Alright. So this is looking pretty good so far. Now I'm just going to make sure that the top of this is nice and smooth, because you're going to be moving your fingers across from this first set of holes in the first chamber quickly to the second one. You want it to be a nice smooth transition. You don't want the top of the second chamber to be uneven or anything. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to work on smoothing this out as it dries some more, and then when we come back we will work on adding the airway for the second chamber, and then we'll tune it. Alright, so now the second chamber has dried enough for us to work on it. Now the highest note on this chamber, since mine is in C, is E flat, I think. Yep, highest note is E flat. That means the lowest note on the second chamber is going to need to be E. So we are going to start by adding another airway like this one here. We're going to add that on the second chamber. Now we're going to put the next little airway here, same height as the other one. Now this might be a little hard to blow into because you have to blow into this little slit that we made instead of an actual mouthpiece, but this in the long run will make it easier when we add the mouthpiece. So let's see what it sounds like. Alright, it makes a sound, but that is way lower than we need it to be. I'm actually going to make the airway just a little wider. Alright, so it's not in tune yet, but what we're going to do, because it looks like the second chamber is still a little too wet to work with, I don't want the second chamber shrinking on me and becoming in a different key. So we're going to let this chamber actually sit and dry for a moment. And then we'll come back to this in like half an hour, an hour. So it looks like the ocarina is dry enough to work on the second chamber. Now, the last note, like I said earlier, on the first chamber is E flat. I don't know if you can see that. So the next note needs to be E, but this chamber is playing a flat C. So we are going to actually add a hole just for tuning. We are going to put this on the side of the ocarina. Since this is only a double, we're not going to add a third chamber. But typically when you add a tuning hole, you want to put it somewhere you're not going to accidentally cover it. I prefer putting them on the bottom or on the side, though I've seen some makers put the tuning hole on the top of the second chamber next to the other fingering holes, which I think is just so confusing. Why do they do that? I don't know. But anyway, we are going to put our first one on the side. We might need to, but if we do, we'll just put another one on the bottom. We shouldn't need to, though. Let's see what it says now. Alright, the tuner was off camera, but... it's an E. Actually, we might have made the tuning hole a little too big, so I'm just going to make that smaller. Just by pushing in on it a little, make sure it's looking good, so we're going to round it. There, let's see. Very solid, very in the green. Alright, so next we're going to feel where our fingers comfortably slide onto the second chamber. Easiest way to do it is just almost directly below the first set of fingering holes, except slightly to the side. So I'm just feeling where my hands comfortably rest on the ocarina, or my fingers, I mean, and that's where I'm going to put the holes. Alright, so I've got a good idea where the holes are going to be. Now let's tune this. So the next note up would be, I'm checking my chart here, F. Next note is F. And this hole only provides one extra note, so completely uncovered, this one should be an F. Ooh, I made it F sharp. I made this hole way too big. Oh well. I can just make it smaller then. Actually, since we made this so large and just pinching it, it's kind of leaving a big indent, I'm just going to take a small piece of clay here, like this. I'm going to wet down where we put that original hole with water, and I'm just going to stick it on there. Smooth it down. and then add a smaller hole. There we go. Now this actually isn't a tool that I'm using. This is part of a stilt that came off, and I'm actually using this to make a hole. But what you can also do is just, hang on, let me see where I'm putting the pinky hole again. What you could do is just use this sharp tool and then, or thin tool I mean, and then just widen it from there. Actually, I'm going to do that anyway because this looks really uneven. Doesn't look round. Let's see what it says. F sharp again? Really? This thing's gonna be tiny. I guess I can't argue with the chart or what the tuner's saying. So there's our tiny little hole. Wow. It's so tiny, look at that. Is it F? Man, I must have like dug into the sweet spot of the chamber or something for the hole only needing to be that small. I'm gonna have to be careful with the glaze then. Look at that. It's so tiny. Wow. It's so amazing. Alright, well, next one is F sharp and G. So this next hole adds 2 more notes. So completely uncovered, this one should be G. What I'm doing here is just putting a little dent so my fingers can feel it better when I'm playing it. Helps me find the holes where they are when I switch between chambers. You might need to adjust the tuning hole every now and then because as you add the holes, the clay gets taken away from it and it makes the chamber larger. It's normally not a problem on the main chamber because that one's so large it doesn't make that much of a difference. Still something to look out for on the first chamber. It's just, it doesn't happen nearly as often on the first one as it does on the second, because the second one is a lot smaller. There, I think that'll do. Yep, there's our next hole. Alright, so next one is going to add 2 more notes too, so it'll be G sharp and A, doing cross fingering. I don't think I explained that earlier. The reason I'm getting F sharp is I uncover this hole, but I hold down the tiny one. So this is F sharp and this is G. So for G sharp, I'd actually hold down this hole, or this one, whichever it is, and have this one, this next third one, be uncovered, and then A would just be all 3 of them uncovered. Oh, and since I am adding another hole, every now and then I'm going to check the bass, the main note, with all of them covered. Because I'm taking out more and more clay, and that's just making the chamber larger. See, look at that. That's way too flat. So, time to make the tuning hole a little bigger. See, it really does affect the second chamber a lot. I'm actually going to adjust the airway a little because it seems like I'm not getting enough air into it. How I'm going to fix it being airy is just how I would do with any other ocarina. Just the slight adjustments I've mentioned in previous videos on the airway. See if that fixes it. Like maybe make this go a little higher. See what that does to it. That made it worse, so lower it is. I think I fixed it. Well, I know I fixed it. It seems like G could use a slight adjustment. Just make it slightly, you know, less flat. What I do sometimes to make sure that there's no loose clay in here is I'll actually blow into one of the holes really hard, and then all the clay will like blow out the other holes. Now A needs to be slightly bigger. Okay, now the next one is the fourth one, and this one is a little different. You're going to, this is kind of blurry, let me fix that. So the next one is the fourth one. You're going to want to leave room for a fifth hole below the fourth one. It's a little weird for an ocarina, I know, but that is actually what the next hole is. So there's actually 5 holes on this, and instead of adding a thumb hole, which I can see why they didn't do that for, you know, when you add other chambers, or having it be right underneath the airway. I can see why they didn't do that, but it is a little weird to have the 5th hole not be a thumb hole and have it be 2 holes for your pointer finger. But since it is the second chamber, and the second chamber is a lot smaller, I don't see that being a problem covering both the holes. You can even do something like I did here, a little indent, which makes it easier to cover both holes. Not sure if I'll do that for this one or not. I might do that. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Next hole adds 2 more notes again, so this one should be B. Whoa. Looks like A got some clay stuck in it. Yeah, just a little bit more taken out. You can see me taking some of it out. This might also be a little bit because we added another hole next to it. Might be changing how the air flows to A. The idea is to have the same amount of breath required to get perfect A on this as you would with E. Breath control is a factor in double ocarinas, but if possible, make it as close as you can between all the breaths you take. G also needs a bit of an adjustment, not much. Alright, B sounds like it needs more air escaping. See, even while I'm adjusting B, it's changing. The last two are the ones that will change the most because they're the closest to the airway. Oh, it looks like F needs to be... Oh, there's just some clay stuck in it. Yeah, you gotta watch F. I'm not sure if this is going to turn out the same way on your ocarinas as it is mine. That's a really tiny... Let me get my triple ocarina that I made. I want to see what its size is on that. I mean, I'm just going by what's in tune. I'm not going by hole size, what it looks good. Hole size is completely determined by what note you need it to make and, well, when it makes the note, depending on how big it is. Oh, well, yeah, there's a little tiny one there on the third chamber. Kind of different on the first one, though. This is a big ocarina, isn't it? I made them in the same key. Alright, well, I guess I can't argue with you, F. You are in tune, but you're tiny. So I guess you'll be staying that way. I'm gonna have to be really careful about the glaze around F there. Especially since it's got these little, finger indents here. B, are you kidding me? You're so close. Hi, Jojo. Hi. Where are you going? What's up, Joey? Don't make noise while I'm trying to tune, Jojo. I'm just making the whole round. Hey, don't claw that! Psst, psst, psst. No! Get! Don't pay attention to him, he causes trouble. Alright, so what's actually happening now is I've been blowing into this so much that the chamber is starting to get too wet and it's making kind of a buzzing noise. I don't know if you heard that on camera. That means the clay's kind of falling apart, so before we do anything else, I'm just going to let this sit for like, I don't know, 15 minutes. Let it dry out a little more on the inside and then we'll start tuning it again. Because you can accidentally ruin it if you get it too moist on the inside while you're still tuning it. Now it's time to add the last hole, which only adds one more note, and it is going to be about here. Still E. Alright, that should do it. Now the next step will be adding the mouthpiece, and this part you have to be very careful on. So let's start by getting a piece of clay that'll be the mouthpiece. I am going to... let's move this out of the way. Just going to roll it up. There we go. Alright, so this will be our mouthpiece. Going to make it hollow with my pinky. Pull it around that. Alright, now I'm actually going to cut it at an angle because we are going to angle the mouthpiece away from the ocarina. Like that. Alright, so we are going to take the bottom and we are going to pinch it out like this, like I normally do. Score it. And we're going to score where we're going to add it, which is right here. Alright, now let's see, where is this going to be? It's going to be like this? Yeah. So I'm actually going to cut off a little place right here, which is where the other mouthpiece is going to be. Or the other, you don't want it to accidentally cover this second airway there. But you do want to make sure that no air escapes between the two mouthpieces. So I'm actually going to also flatten this out on one side because we are going to add the second mouthpiece onto the side of this, like we did when we added the second chamber to the ocarina. Alright, gonna be really careful here. Make sure it's on there nice and tight, no air's escaping. So what I like to do before I add the second one, to make sure I put this on right, is I'm just going to make a really simple hole here that we can blow into and see that all the notes are still working on the ocarina. Now when you're cutting your hole here, make sure no clay falls down into the mouthpiece here. Gotta be very careful about that. That's why I'm adding the hole so early while it's still wet, where no dry chunks of clay are gonna fall in there. Sounds good. Okay, so while this one's still really wet, we are going to take another piece of clay and we're going to start on the second mouthpiece. Camera's running out of power. I'll just take some of the clay from the other mouthpiece and put it together. Alright, now I'll roll this one up. And this one can be made a little different. You don't actually have to make a full other mouthpiece. You can make half of one, like I'm doing here. Now we're going to take our original mouthpiece and score the edges here and here. Get those wet. And we're going to combine them like this. Let's see. It works! Alright, so, like I said, I'm just going to take clay and smooth this out, make the mouthpiece look all nice, and then we'll come back and I'll show the last details that I'm going to do. So, here's a trick if you want to add a string to this ocarina, but you don't want to run it through the two mouthpieces and risk ruining it. I'm going to take a chunk of clay here, and I'm going to close the bag so my clay doesn't dry out anymore. Also, I've been smoothing it out if you can't tell. Looks pretty good, I think. This chunk might be a little too big. Let's see. No, it might work. Alright, so I am going to score the bottom of this right here, and the mouthpiece here. Not too deeply though, because it is very wet. Alright, then I'm going to set this down. Score the bottom, score the side, get both of them wet. And I'm going to add this chunk of clay right here. Like so. What we're going to do is we're actually going to run a hole through this part, and that's where the string's going to be. So let me smooth this out and then we'll do that. Now we are going to add where the string is going to go, which is just, let me get the dry clay off this tool. We are just going to put a hole right here. And it's going to go all the way through to the other side. And this will be a lot easier than trying to run a string through both of the mouthpieces. Just have one be on the side. Or you could just not add a string at all. Most double ocarinas I don't add a string because, well, it's really the type of ocarina that you just don't need one on. The way it's designed, you're always holding it in a place where you're not going to drop it. But just in case you do want a string, I am showing you how to add one here. So we're just going to leave that there for a while. What I've done is I've propped it up on a brick so the mouthpiece doesn't stick to the wooden table. So we're just going to leave that there, and we are going to come back in a couple hours or so. Alright, so I may have figured out why the pinky hole on this ocarina is so much smaller than it is normally on double ocarinas. I was looking at the plastic ocarina that I got a while ago, and I noticed that the tuning hole in the second chamber of this one, which is right here, this is the second chamber, this one's tuning hole is right below the pinky hole, which makes it a lot larger than normal. Because more air is escaping at the back, and to keep it in tune, you'd need to have a much larger hole where more air is escaping. This one, however, my double ocarina, its tuning hole is on the side, not the bottom, because, well, it's a double ocarina. I didn't need it to be on the bottom. And it's between these two holes here, which is why normally in normal designs it's right below the pinky hole, but I like to have mine on the side right here. Even though I'm probably never going to cover it by accident if it's on the bottom, I like having it on the side better because there is no chance I could accidentally cover that. Now as for the triple ocarina that I made, this one, while still small, is definitely a lot larger than it is on the double ocarina, and that's because, like normal designs, this one has its tuning hole on the bottom for the second chamber, because it couldn't be on the side. The side had to be reserved for the third chamber. The third chamber, though, does have two tuning holes on the side, two of them. It has to be very high pitched. It's still not dry enough to add any of the details to it, but I think it's dry enough to add the airways to the mouthpiece. Let me find a tool that'll be good for adding those. I just had one and I don't know what I did with it. There it is. Alright, I'm just going to use this flat bit here, and I am going to carve in where the mouthpiece is going to be right here. I think I can just push in right there like that. Yeah. Now let's widen it. Just go side to side. There we go. That's an airway. Let's see if it works. I don't think it went deep enough inside. What I can do is I can take this one though, this really long one, and just push that through. See, that works. That works, and that looks pretty good too. Alright, so I guess we're just going to do the same thing that we did for this one for the other chamber here. And I'm going to leave a good amount of room between these two. You know, just so you don't accidentally blow into both of them at the same time while playing. This one's going smoother than the other one. You know what I think I did? I think I actually made them too far apart. So, yeah, let's widen them a little. It's a nice solid green. Now, this mouthpiece actually might be a little thick for quick switches between chambers, so I'm actually going to take a little bit off of the sides here, so it'll make it easier for my lips to, you know, slide across the two chambers here. There we go. See how I kind of made it thinner at the top for the quick mouth switches, and then we'll just make those look prettier once it's drier, like I said earlier. Second chamber does still need more air. So I finished the ocarina. I put the line all the way around the entire ocarina, smoothed out the mouthpiece and where you blow into it, and I added a little Triforce design, which I'm going to glaze in a couple different colors. Is there any way, Jojo, I can like try to make a video without you jumping up and getting in it? I came all the way over here, and are you serious? Oh yeah, you want to be famous on YouTubes and stuff, I know. You want everyone to know about JoJo. Okay, I also signed it on the back, and that's really it. Oh, and I did smooth out where the string's going to be. If this video was helpful, leave a like. If you have any additional questions, leave a comment down below, subscribe for more videos like this, and if you haven't already, check out my website where I make these custom handmade ocarinas and sell them. Also, if you're having trouble making your own ocarina or you just can't get a hold of a kiln, I'd be more than happy to take a custom order for you and make the ocarina the way you want it to be. I will leave a link to my website, the custom orders page, and fingering charts for the double ocarina down below in the description, so be sure to check those out. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.